Okay, so I think we are all set here, and I welcome
Excellent.
everyone to our Jumpstart Your Job Search session. And our focus today is going to be on ways in which you can enhance your overall effectiveness with your job search. Again, let's face it, looking for a job is never simple, it's never easy. However, you do have the ability to be focused and organized and strategic with your approach rather than taking a random approach where you're simply crossing your fingers and hoping something will develop. We have a great deal to cover this morning, so I'm going to be going pretty quickly. But as Anne indicated, we will have a copy of this presentation for you, along with some handouts. And the handouts will include job search resources beyond those that have been discussed this morning, networking tips, as well as upskilling and learning options. So do keep that in mind. So let's dive in. Our focus today is on using your skills in new and different ways. And this is about reskilling. This is about thinking about different ways that you can apply your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Again, educational opportunities, the concept of personal branding, and how that can truly distinguish you from those with whom you're competing in the job market. We'll talk about networking and then age-proofing your resume. If you do have questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat area, and I will respond to those as we go along. When you think about looking for a job, it's so important to be mindful of the fact that you have skills, you have demonstrated abilities, but it's about preparing yourself to communicate those skills. But in order to do that effectively, you need to have a clear understanding of what your skills are. So, first of all, as you are prepping for your job search, it's important that you take the time to inventory your skills. Because in today's world of work, hiring organizations are not looking at the amount of experience you have. They're not limiting themselves to where you have worked. Rather, the hiring in today's world is very much skills driven. So skills fall into two categories. Hard skills. These are typically technical skills. So whether, for example, if you are a nurse, your technical skills would relate to your being an RN or an LPN. If you were in technology, again, this would be your technology tools that you have knowledge about. Certainly in the world of the federal government and government contracting, certainly those skills associated with your representative functions in those areas. Now, soft skills, on the other hand, you want to think of in the context of informing, in many ways, how you apply those hard skills. Soft skills also speak to how you navigate organizations and interact with others. So here are some examples of soft skills: complex problem solving, analytical thinking, judgment and reasoning. Now, these skills tend to be not as measurable or quantifiable, but you do possess them. So it's important that you step back and identify as many skills as you can, along with examples of how you have applied both your hard and soft skills. So when you look at your skills, the next component of that skill assessment is determining which skills you have that are transferable, that you can apply in different industry sectors, that you can apply in different functions. Then again, what are those technology skills? And as you are looking at your technology skills particularly, you also want to, and all of your skills, but particularly your technology skills, it's important that you identify any skills gaps that you may have. We've discussed already this morning some of the resources in Montgomery County that are designed to help you fill some of those skills gaps that you have. And then the third category would be developing skills. So let's say you do sign up to take a course learning about AI prompts. That would be an example of a developing skill. And those are as important as the skills that you currently possess. And developing skills are important for a couple of reasons. Not only do you have new skills, but it also demonstrates to hiring organizations your ability and willingness to learn new skills and to be prepared to apply them in your new organization. And keep in mind, for those who are 50 and over particularly, demonstrating your ability and willingness to learn new skills is essential because that is one way of combating ageism. Now, as you understand your skills, you certainly do not want to be in a position of just holding that information close to your vest. Rather, it's important that you have what we call a growth mindset. In other words, when we talk about a growth mindset, it's about your ability and willingness to communicate with others, to be optimistic as you are communicating with others, and to be flexible. Yes, we all have needs when it comes to work in terms of compensation and satisfying our interests, but it's also important that you not limit yourself. So when we talk about a growth mindset, we're talking about thinking of your skills in new and different ways. And we're going to talk a little later about networking, which is a critical means by which you're able to better determine who has a potential need for your demonstrated skills and abilities. So as we look at expanding our skills or those developing skills, there are a number of opportunities. Again, there are certificate programs, certainly community colleges, and professional development. And the word about professional development, as you begin to interview, that's one of the areas that you want to be prepared to probe as you are making your way through the interview process. It's also important that as you begin to network, that you probe your contacts about professional development opportunities within the organizations where you have an interest. There are also informal learning options. Certainly AARP has a number of resources on our site, and I encourage you to take advantage of those because, again, as you are looking to expand your skills and your knowledge, you don't have to limit yourself to only one resource. There are myriad of resources out there in today's world that can be so beneficial. LinkedIn Learning is another one if you have the paid version of LinkedIn, and there are online courses such as Udemy, Coursera. There are coding boot camps, and today more than ever, many organizations do have also have AI courses because let's face it, artificial intelligence, AI, is the future. And it's not so much that AI is going to take the place of people as much as you are in the job search, your knowledge and ability to apply AI certainly can position you well against those with whom you are competing. beyond those ways of learning we've discussed thus far, again, here's some additional ones. Experiential education, volunteering, again, it's about learning. And I will repeat, as you are learning, not only are you able to gain new skills and abilities or reinforce existing skills, but again, from an ageism perspective, you are tangibly demonstrating your ability and willingness to learn. Any questions in chat so far, Anne?
Right now, we are good.
Okay, great. Well, now that we have a sense of our skills, both hard skills and soft skills, let's take that a step further and hone in on personal branding, or what is essentially your value proposition. Because keep in mind, vacancies aren't just vacancies. Rather, when companies have a vacancy, that means they have an unmet need. And there are any number of people who have the qualifications to fill those needs. What you want to be prepared to do is to distinguish yourself from others. So when you look at your personal brand, this is about what you bring to potential employers that are your unique selling points. So not just your skills, but your unique combination of skills, for example. And along with that personal brand, we are also looking at how you communicate that brand. And this is where we talk about the concept of an elevator pitch or a 30-second commercial. This component of your branding yourself and or marketing yourself, because make no mistake, job search is self-marketing. This is so crucial because it provides an opportunity for you to define yourself in a manner that is both memorable and distinctive. And I'm going to share with you an example in a moment. But what you're communicating with an elevator pitch is not a wish list. Rather, it is who you are professionally, highlighting what makes you unique through examples of accomplishments. It also is future-oriented in that it can demonstrate what you are bringing to organizations. So again, your elevator pitch is that personal brand. And as you are developing your elevator pitch, it's so critical that you write it out and then you practice it. You stand in front of the mirror practicing it. You practice it by communicating it to members of your network. And all along the way, you are making refinements because this needs to be a very natural statement you are able to make. It also is important, or will be important, as you begin to interview and you receive what is oftentimes a rather hated interview question: tell me about yourself. A well-crafted elevator pitch is the foundation for your ability to respond to that tell me about yourself question. So let's look at an example. I'm a sales management professional. Right off the bat, who are you professionally? With a wealth of experience and a history of exceeding sales goals. So this is designed to immediately, if I'm hearing this, particularly if I'm a hiring authority, what I am immediately thinking is, really, well, tell me about how you or why you exceeded sales goals. Well, my clients and coworkers would describe me as reliable and dependable. as illustrated by my long-term relationships and by consistently exceeding client expectations. Okay, and then you get into the softer skills here regarding tenure and how it speaks to some of the soft skills that you possess. Okay, so this elevator pitch has me the hiring authority, or should have me the hiring authority, and or an influencer within an organization should have me saying, I want to learn more about Roberta. This sounds intriguing. Now, if you wanted to ratchet up this elevator pitch a bit, you could also include, because Roberta is in sales, you can also include quantifiable information. History of exceeding sales goals by at least 5% year over year. Okay, it's not a requirement, but it's certainly a means by which you have the ability to augment this statement. And I'm spending a bit of time here on this statement because this is so critical. It's not just a throwaway statement that you are, quote, supposed to have. Rather, it does a couple of things. It forces you to think about who you are professionally. It forces you to respond to the phrase, prove it. Because everything in this elevator pitch must be defensible. In other words, you have to have examples that support everything in this statement. And therefore, you are again distinguishing yourselves from others.
Katherine,
Yes.
I do have a couple questions, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. The first one is, can you talk about what those experimental learning options are?
Oh, experiential. Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, exactly. So again, when we talk about experiential education, these would be similar to internships, where you have the opportunity to be on the ground in organizations. In many instances, these are unpaid opportunities, but it creates an opportunity for you to be learning in a hands-on fashion. And these are just some examples. Again, I would encourage you to take advantage of some of the Montgomery County resources that were referenced earlier, because again, I imagine they will also have some options there. And AARP also has opportunities for experiential learning as well.
Okay. And then another question was asked. Someone was saying this is a tough job market for 50 plus mid-late career professionals. Do you have any best practices to avoid ageism?
Absolutely, absolutely. And some of what we've talked about in terms of learning new skills is absolutely crucial. But what I encourage when I'm coaching people, I encourage them to step back and think about what oftentimes may be in the mind of those who may not even be aware that they are biased against people of a different age. And one bias is that older people are not interested in learning. Another bias is that they will not work well with younger peers and or superiors. So again, making certain that you're able to demonstrate through courses that you're taking and or through accomplishments that you've achieved throughout your career will make a difference. Also, this is where networking is crucial, because if you are simply relying upon responding to vacancy announcements, you are absolutely at a disadvantage.
True. And I do have a couple of questions. I have one question and then a couple that relate to the elevator pitch.
Okay.
This one is someone asked, how do you discuss if you had a number of jobs responding to why did you leave? Some cases you may have been fired.
Mhm. Absolutely. And candor is important. Uh, if you've been fired, it's a question. First of all, were you fired for cause?
Mhm.
Or were you simply terminated because your position was eliminated? If you were fired for cause, what you want to be prepared to do is assuming there was no malfeasance, because if you were terminated because uh, you were stealing from the company or something of that nature, I encourage you to get one-on-one with a career coach and work out an appropriate response. Those are difficult, even if you were not prosecuted. That's where you need to be very, uh, have a very well-crafted response. But assuming that uh, perhaps you were having a difference of opinion with your superior, in those instances, what's important is that you demonstrate that not you may have been terminated for cause, but what were your takeaways? What did you learn? It's critical that you're not blaming anyone for what happened. You made a mistake. And whether you agreed with the manner in which that mistake was managed or not is secondary. I made a mistake. And as a result of that mistake, I have taken a step back, engaged in some uh, self-assessment, have a greater degree of self-awareness. And again, you move forward from there. If you were laid off, just state the fact you were laid off.
Right. Okay. And then somebody, this pertains to the elevator pitch.
Mhm.
We have a lot of people who are former government contractors or federal employees, and especially with USAID, and they're trying to figure out their elevator pitch because when one person put down that they had experienced international development they were an experienced international development practitioner, it really didn't work for them. So, how do you create an elevator pitch for moving into a completely different field?
Great question. What you want to be prepared to hone in on will be your skills. So again, you are you are professionally who you've been. Again, I'm just using Roberta's example. I'm a manager in the sales arena, and then you describe your skills, but talk about how you are looking to apply those skills. Remember, we talked about transferable skills. So you hone in on your skills and your potential ability to apply them in your targeted area of interest. And I will share that personally, I have made several radical career changes throughout my career. In fact, my LinkedIn profile and resume don't even reflect the whole first part of my career, which was as a retail buyer.
Mm.
But there were specific skills I possessed as a retail buyer that allowed me to transition to being a recruiter. And it had to do with my communication skills, ability to listen, ability to be decisive. And I will share that when you are making that kind of radical career change, yes, working through that elevator pitch, sharing it with people who are in the areas of interest, the functional and or industry areas of interest you have, is absolutely crucial because they need to provide feedback about the skills you possess that will be most valued in the areas you're targeting. And that is, quite frankly, how I've managed to make a number of radical career changes. It was through networking, and I cannot emphasize that enough.
That's great. We have more questions, but I think you might want to continue
Yes.
on.
And speaking of networking, let's
Yeah.
move forward there. Again, networking is not about just glad handing or asking people if they know who's hiring. It is about connecting with people within your industry and or your industry of interest. So if you're thinking about, and I imagine there are any number of federal government employees who are looking, obviously, if you're not staying within the federal government arena and you're not targeting a government contractor, many of you are looking at other industry sectors. So take advantage of these resources that are absolutely out there. And with LinkedIn, for example, we're not going to delve into LinkedIn extensively today, but I want to reiterate Jody's point about the Career Gateway LinkedIn Boot Camp. And again, on AARP, we have a site, we have any number of LinkedIn resources or resources that will help you optimize LinkedIn. But it's about connecting with people and not asking them about who is hiring, but connecting so that you are able to learn about the needs within the organization. So there are certainly any number of meetups, and particularly in this area, because there's so many varied professions in the Metro DC area. Take advantage of your college or university. If you've gone to community college, take advantage of that as well, because many of these organizations, these educational organizations, have specific resources for alumni that encourage you to meet and greet and learn. And then, of course, you have social media. And I look at LinkedIn, by the way, as a totally different category from Facebook and the former X, the former Twitter, in that how you interact with people is going to vary. And LinkedIn is an absolute must when one is in a job search. If you do not have a LinkedIn profile, I implore you to get one in place. Even if you're going to have to refine it and tweak it, get one in place before the end of this week, because you will need it. You do want to think about your social media footprint as you are engaged in your job search and as you are thinking about networking, because it's important that you are, first of all, are aware that when there's an interest in interviewing you, as well as when there's an interest in extending an offer, make no mistake, the hiring organization is going to be checking you out online. So get in there now, clean up your social media. If there's anything that is even remotely less than professional. I know many of us feel passionate about our points of view, etc. Take it down. This is not the time to assert, well, I'm only being me. That's not going to help you from a hiring perspective. Make sure that you go into your privacy settings so that you are, again, making certain that your content is not spread across the world of social media. However, particularly with resources such as LinkedIn, which is why I differentiate LinkedIn from many other resources, you have the ability to build your credibility in that you can go through LinkedIn and post articles that you write. You can comment on posts that other people have posted on LinkedIn. So again, be attentive to your social media footprint. When you are thinking about networking, start with those who you know, friends, family, neighbors. And then from there, Your objective is to have them introduce you to others. Okay? Because networking is about learning. It's about more than just saying, do you know who's hiring? Rather, it's about helping people be prepared to speak on your behalf. So if I know someone who has a hiring need, and all I know is you're looking for a job, I'm probably not going to refer you to the hiring authority. But if I know that you minimally could be appropriate for that job, I will refer you. So again, think about ways in which you can communicate with people, and this is back to that 30-second commercial or elevator pitch, so that members of your network are able to speak on your behalf. Now, we do live in a world that is vastly different than it was even 10 years ago when it comes to looking for a job. You do have to make certain that you're prepared for virtual interviews, beyond phone interviews. Also, you have to look for companies using technology to hire. And again, it does create efficiency within organizations, but it can be problematic because technology is in many ways used as gatekeepers in today's world. So job boards certainly have been around for quite some time. However, the challenge is it is so easy to respond to vacancy announcements on job boards that many, many people apply for jobs where they have no qualifications whatsoever. I was at a professional association meeting a couple of weeks ago that had a number of senior HR managers in attendance. And one of the HR leaders said they placed online on their job board a vacancy for, I'll just say, a CFO. Within 2 days, they had 2,000 responses. And that was for a CFO, which is a pretty narrow and specific role, but 2,000 responses. So I share that with you because, again, while you do want to respond to vacancy announcements online, if you are judging your effectiveness looking for a job by the responses you receive from that or lack of response that you receive, then you're going to have a difficult time finding a new position.
And if I could interject here, Catherine, we do have several people who have commented that they have sent out resumes, they've received letters, thank you, but no thank you. They're wondering, and then also somebody also mentioned several hundred people had applied for the same position. Is there any way that they can rise to the top, so to speak? Or from what I'm hearing, it's really get out there and get networking, find out who's in that company, etc. But I just wanted to raise that because that's something that's being discussed in chat.
Excellent. Yes, definitely you want to network. But also the other point that is important is that when you are responding to a vacancy announcement, you will need to tailor your resume. I'll talk shortly about age proofing your resume, but you need to have a very solid master resume that is primarily composed of accomplishment statements. But as you are responding to these vacancy announcements, you want to make certain that you are demonstrating on paper that you meet the requirements in that vacancy announcement and that's reflected in your resume and that you're using similar language, similar or the same language that is in that vacancy announcement. Now, that will help, but when within a day, 500 people respond, for example, and out of those 500, there are 99 who meet the core qualifications. Keep in mind your response, even if you sent it in that first day, your response may not even be looked at. Another approach would be when you see a vacancy, go to the company website. And if you are able to respond through the company website, it helps. But again, the odds are not good. In fact, our research at my company, Meridian Resources, is that approximately 75% of resumes that are submitted for vacancy announcements are rejected.
Wow.
Discouraging, but again, back to the point about a balanced approach. Yes, respond. Yes, tailor your resume so that it reflects your qualifications, but network. Now, again, if you have the interest in remote or virtual work that you are particularly interested in, you can certainly make that known. But my response, particularly with people over a certain age, is you need to think long and hard about whether you want to limit yourself by saying, I only want to work virtually or remotely. Again, if you are able to be referred into a company that is flexible, that will work to your benefit. Now, recruiters are certainly a part of the job search, and my recommendation is that you hone in, as we have pointed out here, on industry-specific recruiters and get referrals to recruiters from your network. If you are still in touch with people from your former employer, particularly if you have contacts in human resources, ask who they use as recruiters. And then submit your resume to the search firm or the staffing agency. If they are not working anything appropriate for you at that moment, don't get discouraged because that can change tomorrow. But at least your credentials will be in their hands. Now, as you progress through this process of becoming known within organizations because you're responding to vacancies one way or another, hopefully you will secure an interview. Now, when you think about interviewing, do keep in mind that as you are updating and or refining your resume, you are preparing for the interview. So again, be prepared with examples. One of the biggest mistakes that people make in interviews is they do not provide enough relevant examples that align with the specific position they are being considered for. So yes, be creative, but to the point of obviously being accurate. Someone asked earlier about being separated from, reasons they've been separated from their company. Again, this is not the time to prevaricate. Be honest, but then think in terms of what your learnings have been. And again, on the AARP site, and keep in mind many other sites, there are innumerable resources that will have interview questions for which you can prepare. Now I'm going to skip forward to, let me see if there's anything else here. Oh, just one more thing in terms of virtual interviews. As we saw this morning, things happen. I was looking to share my screen, and I conduct workshops frequently. So Uh, Zoom is not a stranger to me, but still, every so often you get a little bogged down. So be sure you test your technology when you have virtual interviews. Now, with your resume, you do want to make sure that it is no more than 2 pages and goes back no more than 15 years. That's one of the ways in which you are able to age-proof your resume. But anyone, regardless of your age, should keep their resume to no more than 15 years. Uh, Again, the layout needs to be clear and very vanilla, if you will. You don't want to have graphics and photos and little boxes of information. No, it needs to be very simple and straightforward. Use strong, active language, and where possible, include accomplishments and or achievements that are quantifiable. This is not the time to just take your position description and put it on your resume. Again, age-proofing your resume, 15 years or less. Because let's face it, if I'm hiring you, I'm really not terribly concerned about what you did 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I want to know what you've done lately. If you have AOL or Hotmail as your primary email provider, get rid of it. Well, you may keep it if you want, but set up a contemporary email account, be it Gmail or something of that nature. Sometimes colleges and universities have email for their alumni. Do not include graduation dates, it's irrelevant. Do highlight your technology skills throughout your resume. And then when you're looking at the years of experience with your summary statement, this is not the time to lead in to say senior leader with over 35 years experience. That will not work to your advantage. And then the keywords that are referenced here are crucial, demonstrating your knowledge about language within your industry and or your targeted industry, as well as you tailor your resume for when you're responding to vacancy announcements, you are using language that is consistent with that vacancy announcement. So here are some resources. And again, as I mentioned at the outset today, we will have handouts available for you, including job search resources, also networking tips. So I, again, discuss networking at a somewhat high level, but we'll have a handout with networking tips, as well as additional information about upskilling and learning options. So we've covered a great deal this morning that I hope will help you understand where you want to spend your time upping your job search game, looking at ways you can apply your skills in new and different ways, understanding educational opportunities. Take that concept of personal branding very seriously because that feeds right into networking. And trust me, networking will work to your advantage significantly, even if it's about securing an interview through a vacancy announcement and then reaching out to someone you know or someone to whom you've been referred who can provide you with additional background information about the company. And then, of course, making certain your resume isn't screaming, I have 30 years experience, but rather I have over 15 years experience, but experience that is relevant, that demonstrates skills that are viable within your workplace. So thank you for your time. Anne, any last minute questions?
Well, Catherine, there are many, many questions. So
Well,
I'm
I can,
wondering,
I
go
can
ahead.
stay on if anyone has questions.
Yes, if I could ask you, if you could just look in the chat about
Mhm.
10:35 this morning and sorry here, thought that was off. The that would be great. There are some comments but there were some very good questions and if you could just reply to that person, that'd be wonderful. I think the key takeaway is everybody is talking about the networking, and since their majority of their people have been laid off, they're concerned about how to then network. So that I think is the big takeaway for this one today.
I will respond to that.
Okay.
And
And Catherine, if you can respond directly to the
yes,
questions in chat, that would be perfect.
to the individual.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you
Okay,
so
perfect.
much.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Appreciate
And
it.
again, excellent presentation. You got a lot of great comments and questions in chat. So thank you. Thank you.